Hey everybody, welcome back to part 5 of the Rossin Restoration Project. I think we've got everything cleaned up, got all my tools and everything, so I think we should be able to get the majority of this bike put back together today. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. So what we're going to do first is go ahead and get the bottom bracket back reassembled. So got, as far as my stuff here, I've got my grease, my bottom bracket, tools, spanner wrench, fixed cup, and then just the 2 little pin spanners, wrench there on the end. Got my little dust cap thing that goes in the center, fixed cup, adjusting cup, lock ring, got the 2 bearings, and then the spindle there. So the bearings they're basically, you know, they're shaped 2 different directions. I don't know how hard that is to see, but it's kind of rounded there. So you got your kind of the end that's got a continuous ring, and then if you flip it over, you'll see the opened, kind of the opened end portion there. So these will fit into the cups with that open end portion kind of facing out, and then the spindle just sits in like so. If you do these backwards, it becomes pretty obvious that the bearings don't move, so you can just feel metal on metal binding. So make sure you get these in the right way or you'll damage the bearing retainers there. So what I'm going to do first is put the bearing in the cup. Put us a little grease in here just to get started. Got my rubber or my nitrile gloves on. They're kind of a little big, so it makes it a little awkward to work with. Anyway, I'm just going to put grease. I like to just basically fill in those voids on either side, you know, either end where the actual ball bearings. There's usually a little open gap between the ball bearings and between the retainers, so I like to usually fill those, and then I'll just stick the bearing in the cup there. So that's the one end of the dust cap. That's just going to sit like so. Alright, so we're going to carefully guide the dust cover in. Kind of got it snagged on the seat tube there, which protrudes through, but basically we'll just tighten this down clockwise. Remember, this is backwards from a typical English threaded bottom bracket, which would be going counterclockwise to tighten it up. We can get down most of the way, and I'm going to use the wrench to get the rest in there. I like to try to do this wrench where the sharp pointy ends of the spanner are pointing away, you know, and inadvertently gouge the paint there. So I'm just gonna kind of grabbing hold of the seat tube for leverage there. So it's about as snug as I want to get it. Got a little grease here on the race of the spindle. Put that in, and we'll get our adjusting cup set up. Alright, so I want to just kind of do the same thing here. Put some grease in the cup. Grease in those voids between the bearings. Get tighter fitting gloves if you can, or just barehanded if it's not a big deal to you. Then we're going to take this piece, kind of grease that up because it fits into the other, and we'll just kind of, that just sort of presses in there like so. And then we'll just thread it right into the frame there. You can see I can move the spindle, you know, gradually getting tighter. So we want to just basically turn this in to the point of there's no side-to-side play or movement anymore. Starting to lose my grip on it. So go ahead and use our little spanner tool. Usually if you're turning with something like this, then when you get to the point where you just feel everything kind of come together and touch, right there, I'm just feeling the slightest pressure. So I'm going to back that off a little. As far as the lock ring, this end's got a little bit of a bevel to it, where this end's totally flat. So we want that little bevel facing outwards. And so what we want is this to be able to spin as free as possible. But when we grab either end of the spindle, we can't feel any rocking, which I can feel a little bit of movement. So just go a little more. Got it a little tight, so I'm going to back this off. Go a little bit more. It feels not too bad, but let me see what this does when we lock this down. Because usually as you tighten the spanner, sometimes it'll want to pull that and turn it with it. If that's the case, it'll stay about the same, but if this center part stays pretty if it stays the same, what will happen is that lock ring will pull this out just ever so slightly. And that feels pretty dang good right there. Definitely snug. Not feeling any play, so I'm good with this. Just go ahead and wipe all this excess grease off. Hopefully we don't end up with a big blob like it was when I put it together, and then we'll go ahead and put our crank arms on. Alright, so we got the crank arms looking pretty good. Got them all polished up, and I don't know, I think they came out pretty nice. Now as far as, there's kind of a big debate on as far as the spindle where the crank arm goes on, whether you want any grease on there or not, and usually I'll just put ever so slight film on them. Not like a big glob, or I don't like them completely dry. We'll go ahead and just slip that on. Got our spindle bolts there. I'll put some grease on these threads. Whoop. More than I wanted, but I'll put some, share some here with the other bolt. So the dust caps that go on after everything's attached and all said and done and everything, there's two parts of this whole bike that I have not acquired yet as far as parts wise. It's the crank dust caps or dust covers and the brake lever hoods. And I'm kind of in the process of trying to acquire those. I've got actually some bids on some just they're actual Campanolo parts, they're not reproduction stuff. So I've got some new old stock hoods that are supposedly in really good condition. So I don't know, we'll see how that goes. I get them. I don't know. Still trying to acquire those pieces. So the hoods, definitely I want those before we are going to be able to ride it. But the caps, you know, that's just kind of more of a vanity thing, really, more than anything. But yeah, hopefully I should have all those components for too much longer. Hood's probably, you know, definitely gonna want to get those if I take it out riding. As far as torque on these, the torque setting on these spindle bolts, I'm not really going off a set torque. I'm just really going by feel. But I would estimate, as far as Newton meter wise, I'm probably, I don't know, going somewhere 45 to 50 Newton meters would be my guess. But yeah, that spins pretty nice, pretty free there. So definitely better than what it was. All right, so we'll go ahead and get our shifter boss on. I didn't really notice this, but just looking at it, you can see where somebody had to scrape the paint off. But you know, you got this little square section, and we've got our little piece here. You want to get there's a rounded edge and then a flat edge. So we want the flat edge to sit like that. That's basically just a stop for that the shift lever to stop against there. So I'm gonna put just a little grease on the actual shaft itself. And we'll start off with one of the flatter plastic pieces. Get that nice and greased up. Press that on like so. And we've got our shifter levers. So you can see the little hole where the cable goes in. So the cable's going to go down and around, and you can see how that kind of angles over. So this will be the one on the other side. So we want this one will be on this side. Just kind of work that on, and take one of these guys. It's kind of that dome shaped. I kind of cleaned these up, but there's still a little bit of, I don't know, some black stuff on there. That one's got the two flats, so we'll just push that on like so. Got our little, cleaned that up, came out pretty nice and shiny. I'm gonna go ahead and put a little grease on the threads of that. Don't want that sticking inside of there, breaking off in there, anything like that. And you get this little, just like a little wing nut. You know, it's a friction shifter, not indexing, so you basically just tighten that to the point where, you know, it moves, but you want it to be able to hold, you know, when you pull your cable, you want it to hold it into the gear there. So, you know, as I'm working this, it's getting a little freer. So thinking probably somewhere right in there is probably good. That should work. Now I'll just repeat the same process there on the other side. I'll go ahead and get our derailleurs on. As far as that rear derailleur, I had this little piece, the little section of cable there. I went ahead and stabbed a chunk of my Teflon tube. It fit, pretty tight fit, but I got it to fit inside of here. So I'm just going to be using modern cable, nothing fancy. I thought about getting some campy cables, but I don't know, it just seemed like cost-wise, and I was going to have to order it, and it's a little pricey, and I didn't really see that it was, other than it had the little campy logos on it. I didn't really see it, that it was advantage over what I already had. So I've got quite a few cable chunks and whatnot in my toolbox, so I'm just going to use that. Basically cleaned everything up on the derailleurs and didn't do that. It really didn't need much, and then I just pulled the pulleys and cleaned those and put a little fieldwood grease there inside the pulley bushings. A little grease on our derailleur bolt there. Just like any other clamp on or braze on or whatever front derailleur, regardless of the system, typically they work best if you're just a couple millimeters above the top of the teeth and below this cage. You want a pretty tight gap there. The closer you can get it without it hitting the teeth is, I don't know, 1 or 2 millimeters is probably ideal. And then you want as far as the plane of the chainring, and then this outer plate of the front derailleur, you just want those to pretty well match. Depending on what your chain line is, sometimes it works a little better to have that maybe kicked out half a degree or in. It just really depends on the system, but typically a great baseline starting point is just flat. Just a total parallel plane there between both of those two. That looks pretty good there. Alright, so I think what we'll do now is go ahead and put the wheels and everything on and get let's put the handlebars and stuff on next, and then we'll get to the rest of that. Alright, so before we get to putting that on, let's talk about this stem for just a minute. Like when I was taking it apart, I thought this may have been an aluminum bolt, and it is. I've kind of tried to clean everything up as best I could, but it's still a little dingy. But anyway, the way this works, you got this little bolt here. You got this little cylinder-shaped piece that, that basically sets inside of here, and as you tighten that down, just pushes this little wedge and then pushes this, and that's what basically holds up against the bars. So it's a super clean, honestly I don't know what model this is. I'm sure somebody out there maybe that's watching this can enlighten me on what stem this is, but yeah, it doesn't really say. Just says made in Italy, minimum insertion, patent 994CI or OI, or I don't know, I can't really see what that says. But anyway, I think it's a pretty cool stem, but I think in order for this thing to survive, with this being an aluminum bolt, I'm just going to grease everything up real well. I want the threads greased up. I want the part where this is turning inside of here and the washer. I mean, the easier that can turn, the less chance that this is going to seize up or break or any of that. So all these little wedge pieces, that's just going to help them achieve, maximum expansion or whatever, the easier they can slide in here. So yeah. This may be a little tricky getting this in here. There we go. No, forgot the washer. Alright, so it's not super difficult to assemble. Try to keep the grease off the front edge portion of it there. Alright, right there's where I'm just starting to feel it push a little, so wipe this off a little and get our bar in and get this thing put in. Alright. So you always want the curvy pieces here to kind of go inwards. Let's go down a little. Like that. That'll help you get it up onto the main spot there. I think what I'll do is get that centered up and then pull that out and get these two, that plane and this side plane, approximately the same. We've got that pretty centered there. And let's see where that gets us. Yeah. That looks pretty, not sure how visible that is. That looks like a good neutral starting spot. I'll torque this down. It's super fine thread, so it's just part of the design. You have to turn it a lot, but it'll get pretty good and tight. But I don't know, it's a pretty clean looking design. Should be good there. Alright, let's get it in the bike. Plenty of grease. You always want to seat posts and steer tubes. You always want to put lots of grease in here so that thing doesn't bind up in there over time, which is thankfully what somebody did on here. And we want to at least go to the maximum height. This is about where it was before. I go just maybe a hair lower, maybe about right in there. We'll try that. I'm just going to kind of give this a rough eyeball. Use my 3-way. We'll use that as a starting point. Get all this grease off the edge of here, and we'll definitely have to give this bike a complete wipe down after it's all said and done, because it's going to be got some greasy bits here and there. Alright, looking good. Alright, so before I put these brake levers on, went ahead and lubed up the little pivot points there so that spins nice and smooth, and then this part as well. The way this works, you know, there's a little 8mm nut, so that's the nut, and then it just basically, this is kind of all one piece. That'll slip through here like so, and then your nut just goes on the end of that. So that thing was pretty bone dry as far as the thread, so I put a little grease on that. Here, let's see. Yeah, it's 8mm. And then, you know, if I wanted to totally disassemble this, you can. There's a don't know if you can see it, but there's a little flathead screw down in the bottom there. If you take that out, then you can slide this pin out, and then from there that lever will just drop out. But we'll get the other one kind of lubed up there, and then we'll go ahead and install these on the handlebars. So let's slide these on here. And I don't know if you remember on the, when I was taking them off, they were, I think they were mounted pretty far down, probably somewhere right in like here. But we're gonna, I'm going off of kind of this plane here. So usually what I'll do is just this straight edge. You want the tip to just be in that plane right there. So go ahead and see where this gets us. Just line it up straight with that. We'll double check it here. Just a touch. Looks pretty good right there. I'm gonna be all right with that. But yeah, one thing, you know, as far as with the getting these as free as possible, the brake calipers as free as possible, and then like the cables that I'm going to use on here are going to be a modern Teflon lined with maybe a little bit smoother inner wires, shift and brake. So what that's going to do is give us a lot lighter action, and hopefully it's going to end up being more power there at the brake caliper. So that's one thing with these older brakes where they kind of suffered, is, you know, it's just a single pivot brake there, whereas if you look at some of the newer modern brakes, it's all more of a dual pivot style as far as a rim brake on a road bike. And that the dual pivot design is going to give you a lot more brake power than the single pivot style. And then the newer modern levers, they also have a return spring in the lever itself, versus just having these. They got a pretty stiff spring in the brake caliper and then no spring at all in here. So that has to basically pull all that slack out of the cable, pull that lever in place and everything else. So typically the brake effort on these older brakes is a little bit more. And it's just, in general, the braking's not quite as good as a modern day brake, but just pulling a few little secret or little tricks there to try to get us the best brake power we can, using a few modern components such as the cables, and then fine-tuning these brakes to least amount of resistance there as well. Before I get start wiring up these cables, I'm going to go ahead and put these little Teflon tubes in here. Get a little tricky. Let's try it from this way. There we go. All right. That one will probably come up to, I'll go up a little ways with it. You can see where it kind of rubbed the paint there. I'll clip that off there. And this doesn't need to go quite as far. Put like a little point on it so it'll want to go through a little easier. There it goes. That ought to do it. And now we'll run our cables. Just a random cable kit here. It's for SRAM, but it's this stainless steel brake and shift wires, and then I'm not going to need any shift cables, but the brake cables, I think they say SRAM on them, but I'll probably just cut that part off if I have to, and just so it's all just basic black cable there. I think that should look pretty good on there. Drop our cables in there. Hopefully these fit okay. Yeah, let's fit fine. And then just we'll go through our little Teflon tubes here. A lot easier running these than on the current new stuff for sure. Got our little custom lined cable housing there. I think that's just a stainless steel, kind of a coil wound chunk of housing. With that little tail, it'll actually extend through the end piece of the derailleur. Put a little bit of slick honey right here. Get maximum smoothness. So you can see where that little Teflon tube's just sticking out. So these are pretty straightforward. We're just gonna run that along there. You know, and it's not crucial. I'm just pulling the slack out, but you know, it's not, obviously you don't want a bunch of slack in the cable, but you know, the thing with these, it's not, there's no indexing, so doesn't have to be super spot on. Just trying to get this thing to rest in the little groove there. There we go. All right. See how it feels. That feels pretty good. And I tighten her up just a little. Kind of seated everything in there. There we go. All right. Get the front hooked up. All right. Oh yeah, feels pretty good, nice and smooth. All right, so I know in the last video I was talking about which freewheel I was going to go with, and then, so I ended up going with the Shimano. It's a 6-speed, it's a 1321. So anyway, the reason I went with this one is just because I tried the 7-speed and I was going to go with that one, but it stuck out it was almost right to the edge of the lip of where the lock nut sits. So I don't know, I just thought it would be a hassle with the chain getting too close to the frame or the dropout, and this axle so short as it is, I didn't really want to space this out any further. And the 5-speed cassette or the freewheel it just felt, this one had the engagement points are just a little bit closer together, And the other one, as I kind of would do this, it would kind of felt like it would slip a little bit, just felt a little clunky, so went ahead and just went with the Shimano 600. All right. Get these wheels back up in here. Not sure how these tubes are going to do. I put the original tubes in here that came with the bike, and one of them lost air, so I put another tube in. I had a few that I've got saved up that have the 36 millimeter valve stems. So yeah, we'll see. They're holding air for now, so we'll see how it does in a few days. Yeah, I guess we'll get the chain put on. I'm just going to use this Cetus chain that came on here. It's got it all cleaned up, but like I say, I think I've got a Regina chain in my storage stuff, so that may eventually find its way on here. All right, get this chain together. These old school style, you can just there we go. To rebuild this part, it seems like it's a little sticky, a little slow to react. Let's see here. Press that back in. There we go. This type, if you wiggle it, work it back and forth there, because it'll be a tight link at first. Still a little bit tight. There we go. Started to run the brake cables, but I think it's going to be easier if we tape these bars first. And I'm going to do just a little, usually I just do a figure 8, but with these, usually just looks better with these, the old type hoods, to put the little piece of tape in here, and then as opposed to trying to get that figure 8 to come over and cross over the hood to cross over all the tape there. So I'm just going to do it like this. Get all this grease off so we don't have any stiction issues, hopefully. This tape, it's got a decent classic look to it, but it'll feel pretty good as well. Just going to leave my little piece here off until I get there, because I don't think it's going to hold in that long. Trying to get it to where it covers both corners, so I think that'll look pretty decent. And then these bars have a nice clear cut end to finish with there. Although before I started doing this, I probably should have grabbed some electrical tape if I even have any. Not sure whether I do or not. Just scrounge around for something here. Go. I just have to use a little piece of masking tape for that time being until I find my, if I even have any electrical tape on hand right now. This will do, come off pretty easily, but it's be good enough for a little shakedown run at least. It looks pretty good there, I think. Those Chanelli plugs look really good on there. Alright, so here on the brake cable, what I'm going to do, since I was missing the one of the little end caps, I'm going to use just this little Shimano one with a little tail, and I found that fits nicely into the Campy barrel adjuster there, so I'm just going to go that route. Again, one of those things to try to reduce any chances of metal on metal friction, so keep these as smooth as possible. See how that feels. Not bad. Feels pretty smooth. Need to center them up just a little bit. Tighten that up just a touch too. Alright. Yeah. Alright, so we're pretty much getting down to it at this point. Got the pedals on, cleaned those up a little. Got to center up that front brake just a little, but other than that, we're pretty well good to go. Got the bars. Felt like that was a pretty decent compromise between aesthetics and a decent fit position. So yeah, I've got the, let's see what else we need here. I don't know, shoes wise, if I take it out for my first big ride, I think I'm gonna probably put my, I'll probably put some just modern pedals on there for just to get a ride on it, just because I don't really have any shoes that would work halfway decent with these pedals, other than just regular tennis shoes or something. I think that might be a little bit of a comfort issue long term if I'm on it for more than an hour or so. But yeah, I think she's ready to, just about ready to take out on a test ride. So once I get all the other parts, or the the hoods, and the caps for the cranks. Make a little more extended video, kind of do some close-up shots, and then take it out for a ride and stuff. All right, I think we'll straighten this seat out just a little.